opposing the government and opposing the Conservatives. I'm afraid it's the hard left who want to tighten their control. They want to sideline moderate voices. I don't think anybody should be surprised about that is the nature of the hard left. And of course we know that the hard left famously cannot tolerate any dissent.
Who are the hard left, Chris?
Well, we know who the hard left are, who associate with the hard left. You just said that we were right wing. The hard left agenda, printing money, nationalisation without compensation, that sort of hard left wing position. Hard left, the hard left, the hard left, and the hard left, the hard left, the hard left, hard left, hard left, the hard left, and the hard left, hard left, the hard left. Hard left, hard left, hard left, the 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 hard left,
the Chinese youth gangs. Chinese people say Chinese teenagers. Yeah, so the Chinese guys. What are the Chinese? The bosses of China, the bosses of China, the bosses of Chinatown. Chinatown, the Chinese mafia. China, the Chinese mindset. China or America?
The Chinese people, Chinese bad guys.
The Chinese mind, the Chinese this, Chinese that, Chinese Jews, Chinatown.
Hating the Chinese people.
Chinatown, the Chinese establishment. These Chinese cock and bullshit Chinese mafia theory.
The Chinese mafia.
The Chinese mafia. It's Chinese! It was invented in China. Chineseness. The Chinese and Chinese.
Chinese wife.
Fighting the Chinese so hard. Thinking about the Chinese all the time. The Chinese mafia. When the Chinese mafia are out there.
Starting to give the Chinese tweets. Chinese.
For Chinatown.
Yeah, that was another Chinatown dedicated Chinatown journalist.
Yeah, she seems to be on the China beat. I mean, the China network going on in Chinatown and Chinese restaurants insulting the Chinese. He says, ever wonder why the inside of a Chinese restaurant?
China.
Things Chinese.
China with you. No, Chinese.
The Chinese.
Chinese history. Did you know the Chinese?
These Chinese champagne. The Chinese eat the head captain. The richest clan in Chinatown. He's gotta be involved with the Chinese mafia. A rich Chinese guy, he's gotta be in the Chinese mafia and the Chinese war in Chinatown. Chinese gunmen, the Chinese material conditions in Chinatown. The underclass in the Chinese American diaspora.
No, I just hate the Chinese. Just the Chinese.
Chinatown. Mainstream media, yeah. Fake news media.
After the Chinese eat all the Chinese people.
Well, you don't speak Chinese. Why the fuck did I invite you on this fucking episode of Chinese American Society? The Chinese restaurant. Chinese undercover officer.
Chinese police officer.
We're dealing with the Chinese mafia. Chinese undercover officer. These Chinese guys are
Chinese drivers.
Chinese F1 driver.
China. The Chinese.
Chinese.
A good Chinaman. Yeah.
A good Chinaman.
Chinese guy. Chinese people not afraid to work hard. Good Chinese men. Good Chinese men. Chinatown. But they are Chinese. China woman.
Chinese. So far, I'm still a virgin.
The Chinese are always involved in something. The entire commerce of Chinatown. Chinese mafia don. Chinese civilians.
Chinese woman. Chinese women.
Chinese the whole fucking way through.
Chinese woman.
Can you tell us if there is such a thing as the Chinese mafia? The persistent discrimination against Chinese. A sinister Charlie Chan image. Of Chinese people. The Chinese mafia's Chinese.
China is because, oh my god, China might overtake us.
Because they invented the concept of the mafia 1,000 years ago. China, and that's how they speak Chinese. The Chinese Chinatown, the Chinese mafia. What Chinese mafia? Chinese Sino-US relations.
He went to China.
The Chinese and Chinese.
These are my books about China.
All my Chinese books,
so fucking funny.
And
all my Chinese books.
More fucking Mandarin. Chinese women. Chinese.
These are all my books about China.
Here are all my books about China.
Here are all my books about Wales.
The Chinese are stuff. Chinese don't have a word for love.
Numerous Chinese languages spoken in the large nation of China.
The young Chinese guy, he meets the old Chinese guy.
Agent of the Chinese, leave the Chinese alone. The racial slurs for Chinese people, the Chinese sympathies.
Xenophobia. Chinese people. The Chinese people.
Chinatown.
Oh, Chinese guys. Yeah,
if not in China, and somewhere in Asia becomes Emperor of China. Oh, it's Thailand they go to, not China, and it may apparently not even be China. Why do you want to go to fucking China?
Chinatown. You go to Chinatown, Jack.
Chinatown for Chinese. The Chinese, what did the Chinese ever do for us? Chinese person, Brianna Wu, is totally 100% Chinese.
My granddad had a monopoly on all the eggs in China.
The Chinese built railroads.
Books about China.
Chinese people don't kill themselves.
The Chinese nightclub. You're Chinese. Chinese, obviously.
Well, yeah. By Chinese people. Chinese people don't consider suicide to be honourable.
China. He's clearly not real Chinese. Reaganite China. I've got my copy of Thinking China.
Chinese mafia.
Taking down the Chinese.
Bait arrest them for being Chinese.
Yeah, he starts doing random Chinese people in the middle of the street.
Xenophobic. The Chinese government is speaking to this person. Arrest them now.
Chinese people. Chinese people.
Chinatown.
There's no more Chinese extras left.
The Chinese parade.
Chinese people.
Crack a few Chinese heads. You'll get there eventually.
Chinese people loved it, and there were actual Chinese people who said this is the most offensive thing we've ever seen.
About China and the Chinese community. Chinese themes. Chinese immigrants. The Chinese building the railroads.
She's got to get it in there somewhere, yeah.
The Chinese, specifically Chinese, very Chinese, the Chinese Revolution, living in Shanghai, China's communist regime, wholly on location in Shanghai, and would have benefited from the support of China's government. Empress Dowager Cixi, who ruled China in China's history.
He has a fixation on China, knowledge of China.
Well, that's what happens when you fall in with the Chinese mafia. China
invented organised crime 1,000 years ago.
The China connection.
The China connection. Decca versus the goddamn Chinese.
The Chinese mafia's house.
What the Chinese contributed to America. Well, I did learn from this film what the Chinese brought to America.
Half Chinese, a Chinese person.
In China.
Chinese people.
In communist China. Commerce of Chinatown. Chinese mafia. Chinese civilian towns.
Chinese
the whole fucking way of town.
Chinese.
The Chinese. Can you tell us if there is such a Chinese people say Chinese? Yeah, so the Chinese guys, sinister Chinese, bosses of China, Chinatown. Yeah, he starts doing cities because they invent China or America. What Chinese Someone I follow, a Twitter account called Neil Young Updates, has posted a picture of it's like a big billboard on a kind of dilapidated American street, and the billboard just says ketamine. So, and they're just love living here. And it reminded me of a scene in Year of the Dragon, the film we're about to discuss, where the journalist character is talking about, the drug trade, the illegal drug trade, the Chinese drug gangs and so forth. And then, just as she's saying this, she walks past a big glowing sign above a drugstore that just says drugs. And I was like, is this subtext, imagery, intentional?
The thing is, it was written by Oliver Stone, so it's like a Scarface thing where he sees the blimp saying the world is yours. Oliver Stone is not a filmmaker known for his subtlety.
No, but of course this film is not directed by Oliver Stone. It's directed by Michael Cimino, the visionary auteur, director of Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, The Deer Hunter, Heaven's Gate, The Sicilian, and this. In the film Year of the Dragon, Mickey Rourke plays the most decorated cop in all of New York.
He says that. We don't see any evidence of that. He might just be a fucking loser and thinks he's the most decorated cop.
Can I point out, I was watching the whole film.
I'm most decorated cop in New York, and you're putting me, chasing around these kids. It's because you're not the most decorated cop in New York. You're just a fucking loser.
But I was watching the whole film thinking, he looks like they've sort of tried to make him up as like an older character than Mickey Rourke should be playing.
I looked
doesn't quite come off.
Mickey Rourke,
I know. I looked at the
Mickey
Wikipedia afterwards, and that's exactly what they'd done. They tried to age him up 15 years because he wasn't their original first choice, but they sort of fell for him during casting, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I did the maths. Mickey Rourke was 33 at the time, so if they tried to age him up, he would have been 48. That's what they're trying to go for. But it just looks like a 33-year-old guy wearing a wig.
But yeah, he looks...
Well, Mickey Rourke didn't age like normal people either. Mickey Rourke in the 1980s is a very good-looking man. Mickey Rourke at any point subsequently to that is not a very good-looking man. So they took an educated guess that he would still look
he aged overnight
somewhat...
like milk.
Like, he thought he would age
immediately went from
well,
looking
like
28, early 30s, he was great, and then he just immediately looked 50 in one day after that.
Well, I think, didn't he get his face fucked up doing boxing for several years, like after he'd already been a professional actor?
That was his excuse. What actually fucked up his face was he obviously got a shit ton of plastic surgery done in South America, and it didn't go well.
It's like a MacGruber sketch about that.
MacGruber! His surgeon cut him off, so he flew to South America. MacGruber! Turns out the medical standards are a lot more lax down there. MacGruber! He regrets it with every fiber of his being. MacGruber!
He briefly looks like late period Mickey Rourke in like the very final shot of the film, because he's just been like beaten up and rolled around in mud on the ground. And that's the closest he comes to actually looking like an older Mickey Rourke in the whole film. But this film was part of Mickey Rourke's imperial phase. So you laugh.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. It was the peak of his career when he could lead movies and stuff.
The first film he was ever in 1979 was 1941 by Spielberg. Admittedly, that's not a Spielberg film anyone likes, but it does start a trend for him over the next decade of just working with notable director after notable director. You've got the next year Heaven's Gate by Cimino, Body Heat by Lawrence Kasdan, which is a really good, sexy thriller. Dinah by Barry Levinson, I've not seen that. But then you've got Eureka by Nicholas Roeg, which is an awesome film about neocolonialism and exploitation.
Oh, I've not seen that. And
gold mining.
I need to check that out because I do like Nicholas Roeg.
Yeah, Gene Hackman's in it as well. You can't go wrong with Hackman, as he called in South Park. Hackman, my nemesis. Francis Ford Coppola's Rumblefish, The Pope of Greenwich Village by Stuart Rosenberg, which is a great movie.
I like that film, but it's also like the... if you see a dumb guy, their favourite film used to be Goodfellas. Before that, their favourite film was Pope of Greenwich Village. It's a great film, but it's also a film that really dumb American guys like, because they think they're actually like the characters in that.
Some Pope content to come in The Year of the Dragon, by the way. And then, after Year of the Dragon, he does a film I haven't seen called 9.5 Weeks by Adrian Lyne. So this film is only 5 years after Heaven's Gate. This film is 85.
But it was his first film after Heaven's Gate, wasn't it?
Before the Sicilian, but after Heaven's Gate.
Okay, sorry. So the Sicilian came after this. But
the Sicilian was the 87 one, yeah.
Yeah, then in 87, Mickey Rourke did Angel Heart, Barfly, and A Prayer for the Dying.
Angel Heart is such a good film. It's so close to my heart, and there's so much of Gatecast influenced by Angel Heart.
I thought
not directly, just the entire vibe.
The way he eats the eggs is very Gapes, except with Gapes it would be like congealed milk. Just a block of milk.
Angel Heart is very much like basically Richard Miller looking for Mike Gapes, and then it turns out he was Mike Gapes all along.
Yeah, that's very much what it's like. And A Prayer for the Dying is the film where Mickey Rourke plays an IRA guy, and at the time he was actually giving money to the IRA. That's what I call fucking method acting. And then I like Walter Hill's Johnny Handsome from 89, but 87 is basically peak Rourke. So this film is just taking us nicely up to the high point of his career, from which it would be a precipitous downward slope with a brief sort of uptick in the mid to late 2000s. I don't think Mickey Rourke's good in this film. I think it's a terrible performance. And I think,
he's not. Like, Geraint actually identifies that Mickey Rourke is trying to be Bruce Willis in this.
Yeah, he really is aiming for Bruce Willis, the kind of laid back hard man sort of thing.
Yes, kind of breathing his put downs at you.
Yeah, sort of letting his intimidating side sort of sit in the background and try and play it, but it doesn't really work. And you identified correctly on Top Rope Deep Dive, the one that I missed, that it is actually very Jack Decker instead. Specifically, like the scenes where he like storms in and just starts like telling the president, "You need to stop with the special interests, and you need to do this and this and this." Like just like literally walks into the White House
and puts a gun to the president's head.
Yeah, but the fact like he has the grey hair in his hair, but it's like the entire film you're confused. Like you don't know how old Mickey Rourke's character is supposed to be.
Yeah,
it just gets more and more confusing. How old is this character?
You're washed up, White. You're a has-been.
The way he behaves is like the idealistic young cop who doesn't know why you can't challenge the very top of the power structures and stuff. But he only looks. He only looks as young as that because they fucked up the makeup, right? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, but if you also think about, I've got the most citations of any cop, it's like, why? You're only like 28 in this. How did you get so many citations?
And they're not desk citations. You remember that. This is for real hard work on the streets. So let's run down the plot.
His pal, who's like, is he like one rung above him? But the guy who's like his old friend from like school and that, who's also a cop.
He's a bit older.
He's a bit older, but he's still, at that point in his career, a little bit too young for what they're going for.
Yeah, because in this Mickey Rourke's character, he's a Vietnam vet, and this is 1980s. So and Vietnam was like 60s. So like, what do they send to Vietnam when he was 10?
He's one of those guys who like just lies about his age when he's 13 because he really wants to serve his country so much.
yeah, that's a good point actually.
He's basically like Virgil. He just lies about his age.
They pulled out of Vietnam in 1974, didn't they? So if he was 33 when this film came out, then it's still way too young, I think.
The technology was there to make people look older. If you've seen Once Upon a Time in America, they do make Robert De Niro look convincingly old in that. Yeah. And in this film, just like,
that is just a better film that has, I think, more care attached to like every aspect of its making than Year of the Dragon.
Yeah, I mean, you watch that, like, even now knowing how old Robert De Niro would look in his 80s, he still looks convincingly 80 in Once Upon a Time in America.
They had a pretty good go at guessing projecting what he was going to look like.
Yeah. I guess he'd put on a bit of weight after Raging Bull at that point, so any prediction of how he'd look as an older guy before that, they think that he'd be way skinnier than we would end up being. Shit, what was it? Fuck. No, never mind, whatever. It's happened again.
Happens to me all the time, man. You know that.
So, okay, like I've literally got it on my TV as I'm talking to you now, just so I can remind myself of it. So it starts out with the assassination of some old Chinese guy in Chinatown by the young punk.
Yeah, a few of the leading figures in Chinatown are getting knocked off. So the police chief who's in charge of Chinatown, who seems to be a kind of ineffective fat old slob, is let go from the post, and Captain Stanley WHITE is put in there in his place. You meet Stanley WHITE, and he is Jack Decker. And, I think you said earlier, Geraint, like
crime's been running Chinatown too long, and I'm going to stop that. I'm putting you all on notice to get a grip.
I think Decker also, Tim Heidecker in character as Jack Decker, Tim Heidecker in character as Tim Heidecker playing Jack Decker is also trying to emulate Bruce Willis. So I think there is a continuity there.
But specifically, he's a right-wing idiot trying to be Bruce Willis, just basically based off thinking he was cool in some films. So that actually tracks incredibly well to what they're attempting here, I think.
Yeah, so like the earliest Decker moment is when he goes to meet the various bosses of Chinatown.
And he said into the top guys, he's like, "Guys, you gotta stop."
He's like, "Fuck you." Yeah, he says, "This is it. I'll give it to you fast. There's a new marshal in town. ... Everyone, give everyone ample time to guess who the new marshal, who the new police chief of Chinatown is referring to is." He says, "There's a new marshal in town. Me." Just in case anyone missed the point there.
If you pick a fight with me, there's only going to be one winner, and that's Michael Duga.
He says, I don't want to see their fucking faces unless they're bringing me spare ribs in a restaurant. At this point, he's been tasked with taking down the Chinese youth gangs. And all the older Chinese people say, "Oh, it's just the youth."
Not even a specific youth gangs. It's just like
the
youth
Chinese
gangs.
youth gangs.
You're apparently the most decorated cop in New York, but you're being tasked with taking down the youth gangs.
Just round up Chinese teenagers.
I'm going to stop the terrorists. Which terrorists? What their methods? What their causes? The terrorists. Yeah, it's like that.
I mean, I've got it on now. Another thing I'll bring up is the weird fashion in this, where all the the young gangs.
It was 1985.
Like,
come on.
No, like it was 1985. Yeah, and Miami Vice came out in 1984. So all the young people, they're just like the Flock of Seagulls music video. But Mickey Rourke and the main bad guy are dressed like 1940s gangsters.
Yeah.
Like Mickey Rourke's fashion in here.
Despite not being any older than
all
all the young characters that are dressed like young people.
Yeah, so the Chinese guys, unfortunately for them, they kind of tip their hand to him because they say something like, we have this arrangement that's worked for 1,000 years. And he's thinking, 1,000 years? What have the Chinese been doing for 1,000 years? And he will return to this idea very shortly. The bosses of China try and reason with him. The bosses of Chinatown. They say, if the citizens of Chinatown regard what you call extortion and bribery as part of the course of doing business, and have felt that way for thousands of years, why should you be so concerned? And that doesn't convince Captain White. The cogs start spinning in his head and he thinks, for thousands of years? Oh my god, they're talking about the Chinese mafia.
Yeah, I mean, like he goes on saying, like, oh, we don't need to worry about like the Yakuza or the mafia or any other sort of gang. It's the triads. That's what we need to look at.
Yeah,
the triads in this tiny little part of New York. Then, like, it undermines itself later on when they're trying to do deals with the mafia, because mafia is where the money is.
Yeah, but in this early scene where he confronts the various bosses of China, including the dapper young Joey, who's the sort of up-and-comer in their ranks, Joey Tai, I think he's called. Joey comes forth and he explains to him, and this is a fascinating reading of, like, the Chinese mindset. You must understand, Captain, to us, your Good Samaritan, your pagan Christian religion, your Good Samaritan was a fool who risked the security of his family to help a stranger. And it's like, hang on, which country is the communist one? China or America?
Maybe that's the point.
Pushing it, like, it's...
Wow.
That is like some commentary, because the Chinese people should be the heroes in this, the Chinese bad guys, because they're embracing Reaganism, individuality and seeking profit at any cost.
That's very true.
Whereas Mickey Rourke is like, how dare you think you can just come to America and try to make profit and take money? In America, we care about each other. We're a society. It's like, no, you're fucking not. You elected Reagan.
Mickey Rourke is like, he gets this spiel about how, like, selfishness is innate to the Chinese mind or something. And he's like, you're too impressed with yourself. Fuck you. This is, again, one of the most Decker moments. He just says, fuck you. And Joey's like, what did you say? He's like, I said, fuck you. I'm tired of all this Chinese this, Chinese that. You people, you think gambling, extortion and corruption is kosher because it's 1,000 years old?
Yeah, he uses the word kosher despite the fact they're not Jewish.
He's just got them confused. They're all the bloody same, Chinese, Jews. I said, fuck you. I'm tired of... Yeah, where are you? Well, all this 1,000 years old stuff, it's a lot of shit to me. This is America you're living in, and it's 200 years old, so you better get your clocks fixed. You're not special, and you're not above the law any more than the Puerto Ricans or the Polacks. He really puts a lot of venom when he says Polacks, which you'll find out some context for that later on.
Later on, he says it's Polak, but you can tell it was originally written for him to be an Irish American. There's like no Polak in him whatsoever.
He walks out of the room, and just as he's walking out of the room, he just turns around and says, "You're gonna suffer." So that sets up his relationship with the Chinese immediately in his new post as police chief in Chinatown.
I mean, one of the funniest things in this appears at the start, where we have to put a disclaimer saying, this is just a story, we're not actually hating the Chinese, this is just a story, don't worry, we're not actually racist.
I don't think I got that on my version. That must be your new woke cut.
Yeah, like MGM, like they put up a disclaimer at the start saying this is a fictional movie and it does not intend to display any of the thoughts we have about Chinese people.
Yeah, you know you're doing well when you got to put one of those up there.
Yeah, normally they come about 20 years after the film, like, or the product of its time. This was like pretty quick after immediate outrage.
It's like when I saw that far-right meme the other day that was clearly just not true in any sense, and they had a little caption at the bottom that had clearly been added onto the meme after the fact that says, "This is in fact true in every sense."
No, it might be a bit of bamboozled. You remember the opening bit where, like, you've got the guy speaking to camera. He's like, Webster's dictionary defines satire as when a very clever man makes a point about something through humour. It's like, don't make it fucking on the nose so much.
To be honest, Spike Lee is much like Oliver Stone, not a director known for his subtlety, really. So immediately after Captain White, we'll return to his name, Captain White. Immediately after White confronts the community leaders of Chinatown, he immediately has a complaint launched against him with the police by the Chinese establishment. And his friend and colleague, he says, "You made them lose face. You made us lose face. You got no respect." It's like, you're thinking of Japan. It's a different culture.
Well, yeah, like, very much like how you watched Thunderbolt and Lightfoot before this. I watched Showdown in Little Tokyo before this, which is a much better movie, because you've got Dolph Lundgren doing samurai fights with the Yakuza. It's basically the same film, but if you filmed it on a tenth of the budget and made it 100 times better.
His friend and colleague again, Lou, I think he's called, is like, "Do you even have any evidence against these people?" And White is like, "That's the point. These people, you're not going to have any evidence." So he's like, we've basically got to do this like extrajudicially. There's no way that we can get these people within the bounds of the law.
Yeah, he's going to Clint Eastwood.
I think he goes a little bit further, because in the next bit I've noted down, he turns into Enoch Powell. He says, "There's going to be blood flowing in the gutters. These Chinese are going to muscle across the canal. They're going to push the mafia out." And Lou's like, "Who told you?"
Oh, God, no.
Yeah, but not the mafia.
Not the upstanding members of the mafia.
Our beautiful white boys in the who were classed as white in America about 5 minutes prior to the events of this film. And Lou, who told you all this? The DEA? They've been peddling their cock and bullshit Chinese mafia theory for years. And White's like, "You don't know what the hell you're talking."
Fact, like, they just keep calling the Chinese mafia instead of the triads as well.
Yeah, I love how many times they say the Chinese mafia in this film. Like, White's like, "You don't know what the hell you're talking about. The mafia concept's not even Italian. ... It's Chinese. It was invented in China 1,000 years ago." And then it's after this that we find out that White actually was originally called Wazinski, but he changed his name to sound less Polish. And I guess if you're trying to fit in like a very white society, then White is a pretty good name to pick. Although I would point out that
I assimilated. Why can't those bastards do it too?
I'll put a little beep there, but I will point out that the Polish are not known for their blackness or their Chineseness even. So Lou, in a way that only he can, I may have to get another beep in here, urges White to call off his white supremacist crusade. He sort of cautions him against his kind of obsession with the Chinese, and he says again, just go after the youth gangs, call them what you want, snot-nosed scumbags. But just focus on them. And he's the character who is like urging him to go easy on the Chinese. When White storms out of the office, Lou just says incredulously to the other cop, "He's got a thing for." Which is kind of like I think he does. Yeah, I think this guy kind of.
This is basically like the ultimate pussy movie. It's like, oh, I can be like just a fucking disgusting, useless, racist guy, but at the end, I will get a beautiful young Chinese wife.
Oh yeah. The ending is fucking preposterous, and in Cimino's defense was dictated by the studio and feels like the most half-assed. A director who would sweat over every millimeter of every shot in every scene of his films. The ending just feels like he was like, oh, fuck it, let's just film it in 5 minutes and just stick it on.
Did you see what the original last line was supposed to be?
What was it again?
I did.
So
I
the actual last
page.
line.
Well, should we do this at the end? Since we're running through the plot, should we do this bit at the end? Yeah, sorry. So yeah, after that, we meet his bitch wife, basically.
Yeah, his useless bitch wife, who's actually really handy. Like, she's trying to fix.
Seems to genuinely be the only sympathetic character in the entire movie.
Yeah, there she is. She's filthy on the floor on her hands and knees like a bloody man doing fucking DIY. And she's
got short hair. Who the fuck does she think she is?
Yeah.
She's a fucking leather.
She even dresses like a man. She wears like suit shirts and fucking trousers. Just like, what kind of... Does she expect Mickey Rourke to come home from a hard day fighting the Chinese and have to put up with this shit?
In this, like, Mickey Rourke is supposed to be like 48 or so. It's like, oh, I've got my bitch wife who's 35. She's so old.
Yeah.
I need to find a younger one.
Bear in mind,
I can't believe the line they have about her age.
Supposed to be like a decade younger than him, and he's still fucking kicking off.
Yeah, and it's just like the classic, like in JFK, where she's like, "What, darling? Why?" Or I guess they're from New Orleans. They'd be like, "Darling, why'd you want to save American democracy? Darling, why are you out there trying to save American democracy from a vast right-wing conspiracy when you should be at home helping me put the kids to bed?" Sir? But yeah, she's just nagging him, and like she's on the floor doing DIY, and the room is obviously messy because she's doing DIY, and he's like, "Ugh, the place looks like
Clean
shit."
this shit up.
And she's instantly like, "Why the fuck are you breaking my balls?" Like, that's how much of a man she is. She's got balls. She's come, and they get into a whole argument about how he's breaking her balls. He's like, "I'm not breaking your balls." She works nights as well, rather than staying up.
No, she works nights. She works nights as a nurse.
A nurse.
She's like
she should be looking after her man.
Person. Perfect in this. It's like, oh, why are you going like saving sick children? You should be here with me in my weird Catholic bedroom, telling me how great I am.
Weird Catholic bedroom. I love how they have 2 Catholic calendars in the house. They have one of the Pope in the living room and one of the Virgin Mary in the kitchen, so they could always keep a track of the days in a Catholic way.
Like I say, I have this film like going on as I'm going forward, and above their bed they have a crucifix. And she's putting on her coat, going to the hospital as a stupid, useless 10-year-old husband. It's like, oh, fuck you. I've got to fucking take down these fucking...
Yeah, she's working nights instead of staying at home so that she can wait on call to have sex with him when he spends apparently weeks at a time not even coming home because he's just fighting the Chinese so hard.
Yeah, and then like when he gets home, he's got whiskey dick. He's not even going to be able to get up, and he's going to blame her.
Yeah.
Like, maybe if you were younger, maybe if you weren't a fucking old hag of 35, I'd find you attractive, and you're the reason I can't get an erection.
Yeah, it's totally her fault, and like she's like bitching at him that she's ovulating, and he's not even... She wants to have sex, actually, and he's just like, nah, sorry. How am I supposed to get it up when I'm just thinking about the Chinese all the time? The Chinese mafia. How are you supposed to carry on as normal when the Chinese mafia are out there running the streets and restaurants, apparently. The Chinese restaurants
like,
are a big part of their criminal empire, we learn.
He's like a fucking pussy in this. Like, every time like his wife tries to have sex with him, he just finds an excuse not to.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Sorry, love, the triads are out about tonight. So she goes to work and he just immediately gets on Grindr. Starts looking for Chinese twinks.
But yeah, as soon as you meet his wife, you're like, all right, she is going to die at some point in this movie. There's no point that our hero is supposed to stay with this awful woman for the rest of the film.
There's the scene in the restaurant where he meets the half Chinese, half Japanese journalist.
Oh, you're so right. I got my racist quotes from the film confused and thought that this was one from later.
Oh.
Have you got the Wikipedia page up or anything, Geraint? What's the name of the woman who plays the journalist?
So that is Ariane. Technically Ariane Kazumi, but she just went as Ariane because she was a model basically. This was her first major acting role and one of her last because like the critics were not impressed, and she was
widely
like, "Fuck this! I'm going back to modelling. I'm good at that."
Yeah, I think there are scenes in the film where she is better than others. I'll diplomatically say.
Yeah, there's some she's fine in, and there's bits where I don't know if they were doing the 50-take madness that he's known for as a director, but some of them can't possibly have been the best ones.
Yeah, some of them it's like Gal Gadot line delivery, like weird emphasis on every line, like you're supposed to stress a completely different part of the sentence to what she does. But yeah, so he's met her doing her reporting on the Chinatown turf
that was
war.
another question I had about this film. Like, he's a journalist, but it's like she just only reports about Chinatown. It's like she a dedicated Chinatown journalist.
Yeah, she seems to be on the China beat.
Anything.
I mean,
the China network.
They
never
might have
explained why she just only reports on this one street.
Remember that like print media properly existed back then. They might plausibly, in a big market like New York, have had like district reporters that covered a small part of the city in depth.
Yeah, that makes sense. So he's met her reporting on the events going on in Chinatown, and he eventually persuades her to go for a drink with him. And he immediately, as soon as they're in the Chinese restaurant, starts insulting the Chinese. He says, "Ever wonder why the inside of a Chinese restaurant makes you feel like you're inside a motor vehicle bureau? I feel like I'm waiting." Was there more of that?
like his thing is like total like classic pickup artist thing where like he just negs her a lot, and then he brings out basically a picture book about China. Showing
I turned my laptop screen upside down so I could see what that book was called, and it's called Things Chinese.
I slowed it down to see if that was an actual book or if the pages were just blank. There is writing on the pages beforehand, but it's also like improbable. Like he just gets to that page so quickly, unless it's like he's had it licked down or something. But
that's the only page with a picture in the book. That's the one page that he's looked at.
It is so fucking funny. Like if you're on a first date with a Chinese girl, you just bring a book about China with you, and then just open it to the page you have set and say, "See, I know Chinese have been discriminated against."
Yeah, because she's like, "Oh, you're doing your research. I'm impressed." And he starts then explaining to her, it starts white-splaining to her about how the Chinese died building the railroads. And then he starts boasting, I happen to be the most decorated.
It happens again later, but they basically might as well have just stared into the camera and said that. And just like said, "See, we know a bit about Chinese history, we're not racist."
We can put this in the not racist column.
Yeah, you've seen the Barbie film.
Right. Nah, I haven't watched it.
I assume you both have. Geraint, you've seen Barbie?
No, actually.
Oh, in that case, I'll just ignore that. Got the soundtrack. I had a good point there, but it's...
well, listeners might have seen it.
It's going to waste because both of you obviously hate women, whereas I'm obviously a big feminist.
Yeah, like there's a Top Gun movie that came out around that time. Why the fuck do I need a Barbie film? Got Tom Cruise in them.
Yeah.
No, I watched Oppenheimer instead. You were only allowed to see one, as I understand it.
Yeah. I didn't watch Oppenheimer as well.
But yeah, my point is, in a film, we will just occasionally just basically talk to camera and go, "This is the point we're trying to make."
Yeah.
We've not heard about subtext or anything. We're just going to stare at the camera and go, "Oh, in this case, it's like, did you know the Chinese weren't allowed to bring their wives over until 1948?"
Yeah,
And
but
we do twice in the film.
All right, so is that are you thinking of the famous scene in Barbie that I have seen clips of where she explains
that one.
feminism or whatever?
Yeah,
Explains how
fuck
patriarchy
subtext.
works.
We're just gonna look into the camera and explain stuff because we assume the audience are idiots.
Yeah,
That happens twice in this film. And
well, it's slightly
basically
different
is
in
the
this
same thing.
instance because of the weird glee with which Mickey Rourke does it. He sounds like he's relishing in the suffering of these Chinese migrant workers on the railroads. And then he immediately, he's like a broken fucking record. He's like, I happen to be the most decorated cop in the city of New York. I'm talking action decorations, not desk citations. And then there's an incredibly Decker bit where the restaurant proprietor comes along and he says, "Captain, do you like Chinese champagne? Very good. This is on the house." And he says, "Thanks, Terry, but no thanks. I pay my own way. The fish stinks from the head, does it not?" It's like, I think it's the way he goes, "Does it not?" It's a super Decker-y thing. And the restaurateur counters, "The Chinese eat the head, Captain." And as the guy walks away, he goes, "Hey, looks like champagne anyway." And she's like, "I think you upset him." And he goes, "I certainly hope so."
It's the most awkward first date ever. He's so charmless in this.
Yeah.
These days, he would be just explaining to her about how Andrew Tate says he should punch him in the face.
or the pussy. How the Labour Party says you should punch him in the pussy.
What woman would be charmed by that? If I went out with an Asian lass and I was going on a first date and I just turned up with a book about, so this is a bit about Vietnamese you might not know. She would just immediately just say, "I need to go to the bathroom," and then just leave in front of me.
I like when he then explains to her why he's so dead set on going after this Harry Young guy. He says, "I look at it this way. Harry Young is the head of the richest clan in Chinatown. He's gotta be involved with the Chinese mafia." I mean, I love the logical leap there. And then he explains his logic further. Even if he isn't doing anything, he's gotta be doing something. This a bit George Orwell's 1984, I think. If he's a rich Chinese guy, he's gotta be in the Chinese mafia, and even if he's doing nothing, he's gotta be doing something. I mean, I don't really see how the Chinese can win in this. If these are the laws that they're...
to modern times. If you see a young black guy who's got some nice trainers on and stuff, as the police, you'll stop them and search them because you assume they're involved in organised crime.
Exactly, and the way he finishes that soliloquy is super Decker / Steven Seagal. "And if I can nail the son of a bitch, he's got face, I get face. And if I get face, I can win the war in Chinatown." It's okay, again, I don't follow the logic of that at all.
No, this entire film, it seems like it's basically a first draft before you flesh it out and remove the bad bits.
Well, as I said on Top Row Deep Dive, Oliver Stone was doing coke at this point in his life. And I don't know about Cimino.
Yeah. It is basically, it is an Oliver Stone first draft, which you would have to refine and take out some of his mad shit from. But in this one, it's just no, it's pure Oliver Stone.
Yeah.
Even
somewhere there'll be a first draft that's considerably worse again, just sitting in a vault somewhere.
No, but even later on when we get into Vietnam, all the politics are confused. They just wanted to shove in Vietnam references somewhere.
Yeah.
They didn't have an idea what to do about it.
He tells, what's the reporter's name?
The character?
The actress, yeah.
Oh, the actress, Ariane.
No, sorry, the character. We already said the actress's name.
Yeah. The character's name is Tracy.
Tracy. Yeah, he tells Tracy, "I want the rice to boil over in Chinatown."
Fucking hell.
An ominous statement of intent.
Yeah, and then we have the action sequence, which is very, in my opinion, it's okayly directed. It's just very short, and if you've ever seen a John Woo film, this looks like absolute shit.
I honestly thought the action in the film was pretty good, but
it was fine. Yeah.
Well, before the Chinese gunmen come into the restaurant anyway, he explains a little bit more why he's so pissed off at the Chinese. He says, you got a slave population of sweatshop women working for 12 cents a piece. You got shopkeepers paying bribes to every punk that comes along. You got 30 people living in a room. We do see at the start of the film, just a quote-unquote punk shooting a shopkeeper just for... The shopkeeper does use a racial slur against him, but still, he does just murder him in cold blood in his own shop. He's like, you got the highest rate of TB and mental illness in any city neighborhood. That just stuck out to me just because it's interesting to hear people in previous decades talk about mental illness and like explicitly refer to it that way. But also it's interesting because it's Cimino looking into the material conditions of Chinatown, which is very much not something that's present in much of the film. But you get the sense that in his extensive period of research for it, he learned a few things about how the underclass in the Chinese American diaspora were living and wanted to show that on film.
Yeah, but also like him talking about mental illness, and then there's the bit later on where they say like, "Do you have a PTSD from Vietnam?" It's like, "No, I just hate the Chinese." It's like it immediately undermines it all. Yeah, the Chinese have PTSD and mental ill problems because they're all pussies, not like Michael Rourke.
Michael Walker.
You need to put that bulldog advert out your head, man.
not like Mickey Rourke. There is a bit like later on where they like talk about like, yeah, I went to Korea too, and like, yeah, we had problems, but we didn't get obsessed with this.
Yeah.
But they just dismiss all the ideas that Mickey Rourke's character could be suffering from PTSD or anything. Like it seems like Mickey Rourke's character was actually racist against Asians even before Vietnam.
It's interesting to compare him to another great Polish American, Walt in I forget his surname, Walt Polish in Gran Torino, who also served in Korea and consequently hates Asian people. But in Gran Torino, they do imply that he was severely traumatized by the war, whereas Mickey Rourke is like, nah, that's pussies.
Oh, so weird, because he should hate all Asians, but he's just really fixated on Chinese. Not the Koreans, not the Laotians, not the Japanese, just the Chinese.
He's going to take on Korea. He's going to take on Koreatown next. Like, following the happy ending of this film in which he remains in one piece. Next up, you better watch out, Korean Americans.
Fuck, I would love Year of the Dragon 2, taking on the Yakuza.
So there's an interesting kind of through line through the film that isn't really explored that well about, like, the role of journalism. So when he tells Tracy all about the material conditions of Chinatown, she says, look, I'm a reporter. I'm not a crusader. Like, her job is just to report the facts as they're told to her. And he says, I can help you. I'll give you hard facts, concrete facts.
I'm saying concrete facts.
Off the record. You know, you can take a little bit of journalistic license. You know what I mean. So he's just basically like, yeah, come on. Let's do a bit of lying.
Yeah, and then, later on he has a big rant about it, which we'll get to in a bit.
About the fucking mainstream media, fake news media.
After the Chinese scene, there is the bit where all the Chinese people are talking in a room. I don't know, because I watched it on YouTube. Did you have subtitles for this?
Nope, I didn't understand the fucking word.
I put the subtitles on at this point in the version I'd got because I wasn't sure if it was a deliberate decision or not for them to not have them. But then the subtitles I put on translated what they were saying. So,
okay.
Oh wow!
Obviously.
So Grant, you're ahead of me because I didn't know what they were saying.
What, you don't speak Chinese? Why the fuck did I invite you on this fucking episode? For fuck's sake.
You work out what they're sort of saying by the body language. You know, it's called acting.
Yeah, but I assume it's basically...
they do say the slurs in English.
I assume it's just that, like, Joey is consolidating his power within Chinese-American civil society.
It's
basically, of the gang.
If I remember rightly, they're all like having a chat about the way things are and stuff, and he's like coming in and being a bit brash and not playing by their rules. It really it's part of the setting up the parallel between him and Mickey Rourke.
Reaganite economics in the 80s. He's the Reaganites who's taking over and saying, "I'm wearing a flash suit." You know,
he's like, "No, guys, this is the new way, and I don't care if you look down." You know, all this stuff, and then
but it seems like kind of a critique of Reaganism, because it's sort of like the older generation had respect. They knew that we had an arrangement and it worked. Then this kid, he's just a killer.
Possibly, yeah, burning it down for.
That scene reminds me of. It seems quite about Jack. Have you ever seen the Merry Christmas, Miss Lawrence? You know, the David Bowie Japanese POW film.
I don't think I actually have seen that. No.
No.
I remember you put a bit about it in Gapecast.
Yeah, but like there's basically two ways to watch it. One if you have the Japanese subtitles on, and one if you don't. So if you don't have them on, you feel like more in the character of the English prisoners, where they don't know what's going on. Or you can watch it with the subtitles, and you see all the bits they're actually talking about, what they're actually talking about.
Yeah.
So it might be a bit of that, but obviously Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence is a much better film than this.
The next bit that I took notes on is that immediately after the Chinese just try and kill him in a bold and brazen assassination attempt in the Chinese restaurant, he's called in for another bollocking by his superior officers in the police. I love how cliched the dialogue is in this scene. The police commissioner is like, "I just spent the last half hour on the phone getting my ass chewed out by the mayor." But there's another incredibly Decker moment in this scene where Mickey Rourke says, "If I can get to them, and I will, then I got one hand on their balls." So he puts a bizarre emphasis on balls. The next super cliched action movie bit in this scene is that Stanley White wants to put a Chinese undercover officer on the job, and they've only got one guy who is a viable candidate for this role, and one of the other cops protests and says, "He needs another 100 hours police training minimum." And then there's a pause and the commissioner says, "We don't have another 100 hours. It's like, I can't remember what film I watched the other day, but there was somebody actually said in it, his methods are unconventional, but by God, he gets results. Oh, it was a Dirty Harry film, that's it. His unconventional methods of just murdering people. His innovative policing techniques.
Factory just found one Chinese police officer, apparently, who exists in NYPD.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, you got undercover. We will not cover you again for the next 45 minutes.
Yeah.
We're just not going to mention you.
Remember, it's not an exercise, Herbert. We're dealing with the Chinese mafia. He immediately starts razzing the fucking Chinese undercover officer.
They give him no respect whatsoever, in the car with him.
Did you ever notice this? These Chinese guys are always blocking traffic. They drive like their music, right to left.
Yeah,
but he makes a really weird reference about that's why you never see any Chinese drivers in the Grand Prix. It's like, you're American. What the fuck do you know about F1?
Americans know fuck all about F1. To be fair, there wasn't a Chinese F1 driver until about 2020, but that's beside the point.
I think that makes his point even fucking stupider then, because it's presumably they're not in there because, probably some kind of diplomatic reason. China aren't participating in that Western sporting competition.
Formula One was Europe, Brazil and Argentina, and nowhere else really cared about it. I think Japan were maybe starting to around that time.
Yeah. No, it's just because the Chinese can't drive.
If you were in America or if you were in China, you would not give a flying fuck about F1.
Every other country is in
or you
F1.
wouldn't be interested in motorsport.
If you were Japanese or Chinese, your sport was drifting cars around dangerous curves on a big mountainside, as we know from Fast and Furious.
You got the Iraqi F1 team, you got the Antarctican F1 team, hell, you even got the North Korean F1 team. It's just that the Chinese, they can't hack it. So then we meet a good Chinaman called Tony.
I reckon it's probably short for Tony Blair.
Finally, we get ourselves a good one.
Yeah, that is literally his entire characterization.
Yeah.
The good Chinaman.
He's in this sweatshop where the bodies of the two guys who tried to kill him at the restaurant have been found after, obviously, Joey has them executed. Doesn't even look after his own, goddammit. He talks to this old Chinese guy who works in the sweatshop, and he's like, "You're a good man, Tony. Not too many of you left." And Tony's like, I know.
You're one of the good ones.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Tony's like, oh, thank you, white man.
Yeah, he's like, I know. You don't have to tell me. I know. All good men gone. Long time. Young people no respect. Steal, shoot, kill, like white man. Chinese people not afraid to work hard. And then I didn't bother noting down all his other complaints about the younger generation. But then White is like, Tony, there should be more men like you. And it's like, that's basically what he just already said to him in his previous line. It's just like, Tony, you're a good man, and you're one of the last of your kind, a good Chinese men. And then Tony just goes on this long rant about how kids these days aren't the same as before. And then he's like, Tony, you're a good man, you're one of the last good Chinese men.
Yeah, all it's missing is him just like Tony going, you know what, you're a credit to your race.
Yeah. If you were wondering what his theory as to why Chinatown has erupted into a gang war is, in the next scene, Tracy asks him, Captain White, can you give us any idea of who and what's behind this wave of violence? And he says, who and what? 1,000 years of civilization. That's who. That's what. You ought to know that. So he's basically just like, it is that they are Chinese that is to blame for this violence, and you, China woman, should know this.
Well, technically, she's not Chinese because she's also half Japanese. Like, says like, yeah, my dad was Chinese and my mum was Japanese. Yeah. Okay, so you're like, like, not.
Fucking hell. Moving on. So the next scene we see is bitch ex-wife. Sorry, his bitch current wife again. Moving on from problematic attitudes to women, we meet his fucking cunt wife. And she, being, you know, a jealous harridan, sees him arguing with Tracy outside the restaurant. She's immediately like, he's having an affair, even though he isn't yet. And she gets mad pissed off at him, and he comes into a restaurant to talk to Joey, and basically just leaves her silently stewing at a table on her own. And of course, by the time he gets out, she has left. But in the meantime, he goes off to talk to Joey in his office, and he says, see, I'm a stupid Polak, a peasant. You gotta make things real clear to me. And Henry really breaks things down there at that point and tries to bribe... Joey, because I kept thinking that this was Harry Young, but actually he's Joey, and I think he killed Harry Young. Joey then tries to bribe him, you know, really cuts to the point. And he says, I'm not an Italian. I'm a Polak. And I can't be bought. I'm gonna burn you down. I'm gonna drag you and your dirty laundry out on the street, and I'm gonna humiliate you. And Joey's just like, you are very stupid, and you're not gonna last. And his response to that is, I'll last long enough to piss on your grave. Which is exactly what Decker would say in that situation. So then he goes home, and of course his bitch wife has overreacted, being a hysterical fucking woman.
His bitch, old, unfuckable wife.
Yeah. We'll get to the quote about that in a second, I think. But she has thrown all of his possessions out of the window of their beautiful house. So he immediately...
he has like a fucking massive townhouse. How the fuck do you afford that on a cop's salary?
He's uncorruptible, remember. He can't be bought, so presumably not by nefarious means. She has pissed him off, so he immediately heads off to start an affair with a woman who his wife is angry at him because she mistakenly assumed he was having an affair with.
He has no viz there. Like, why the fuck does she like him? Just like this annoying dickhead old white guy. It's like, okay, yeah, let's invite him up to my apartment.
Well, he basically...
he's got some flowers. He is literally like just throwing flowers out from his car.
Yeah,
like,
he drives along, he starts throwing flowers at her, and then she says, you know, I'm not some hooker on the streets of Saigon. And then he starts making all these jokes about her being a Vietnamese prostitute on the streets of Saigon.
Yeah, that's how to charm a woman. Or at least that's how I do it. Never worked so far, I'm still a virgin.
I think no, she takes him back to her place at this point. As FFF
She
says,
takes him back to her mad 80s flats.
yeah,
Yeah.
always works. This is when he lays down some more dimes of wisdom on her. He says, "You know, the Chinese are always involved in something and never involved in nothing. Remember that." She calls him a racist at this point for some reason.
Yeah, like this scene is like so bizarre. Like, just invite like this basically old racist guy into your home. It's like, oh yeah, I'll get the wine out. I'll get a couple of glasses. I'll make myself comfortable. It's like I would not let this guy anywhere near me.
Yeah,
It's just like wandering around her beautiful, nice flat, just going on about.
she's
What
like,
the fuck?
"You're such a racist," and then she asks him if he was in Nam, at which point he confirms that yes, he was. It's like, who could have put that together about this character with his weird obsession with the wrong type of Asian people? But he sort of explains it further. He says that the first time I saw you, I hated your guts. He says that in a very, very fucking Decker-ish way. Your guts!
This is very much me on a first date. Like, going out with someone's like, yeah, I fucking hate your guts.
Your guts!
Fuck you. Now have sex with me.
He says, I think I even hated you before I ever met you. I hated you on TV. I hated you in Vietnam. So she is on TV. I don't know if he was aware of her while he was in Vietnam. I think this individual did not play a part in his Vietnam combat experience. I don't think she was there in the flesh in Vietnam, and I don't think she would have been broadcasting on TV at this point because she seems quite young.
This is why I said earlier, this is like the ultimate pussy film. It's like, okay, you can be like just a fucking useless, violent, racist guy, and then an Asian woman will find that charming.
I think this is the hottest guy ever. He concludes, this is actually pretty cool. He's like, you want to know what's destroying this country? It's not booze, it's not drugs, it's TV, it's media. So another broadside against the fake news media.
And again, that is something like a 40-year-old guy would say to a girl who's 18. Trying to look smart.
Do you deny the facts of what he's saying, though, FFF? Can you argue with that statement?
I will do when I'm not like 8 pints down. I will argue with Mickey Rourke on anything on this. But yeah, like she's like so fucking like cool. Like he's just like, oh, I'll have a glass of red wine. And like you've just got like this old drunk guy coming in and just yelling racial slurs at you, taking his pants off. Why are you not sleeping with me?
No, but she does. He sort of starts raping her, and then she goes along with it.
Yeah, again.
Which I think you should probably still consider that a rape, shouldn't you? If the commencement of the act is aggressive and non-consensual.
It's like I can like on part of it. It's like, yeah, this is the 80s. That's how it worked. But like, there's no issue of consent in there. Like, it is just like this 50-year-old guy coming in, calling me a then throwing me down and forcibly taking off my clothes. That is essentially what that scene is.
Well, when you put it like that, you can make anything sound... you can make the most innocent act sound nefarious if you put it like that. So yeah, immediately after he rapes her, the next scene is he's now telling an army of uniformed officers, I want to disrupt the entire commerce of Chinatown. So basically, he's kicked the war into another gear.
If that is a scene, like, there is a scene where they say, like, oh, well, what if I don't do what you say? Like, he says, I'll punch you in the mouth. And, like, there's a female officer who says, like, oh, what about me? He says, I'll bend you over. I can't tell if he's an older, young racist because his hair says old, but his face says young. It just confuses me the entire film. Well, how old is Mickey Rourke supposed to be?
Yeah, that's confused me now. The way I interpreted that was... I've noted it down as she better bend over. So I think the female cop was asking, what if the Chinese mafia don who we catch up with happens to be a woman? And so he's saying, she better bend over.
That does not make it any better, Jack. It makes it even worse, frankly.
Well, I wasn't defending it. I'm just trying to provide an accurate summary of the scene. It literally means the same thing. It's just that he's...
the scene where Mickey Rourke is talking about sexually assaulting people.
Yeah, it literally means the same thing. It's just that, contrary to what you said, I think he's talking about sexually assaulting Chinese civilians rather than fellow police officers.
I'm going to rape a Chinese woman. I would never rape a white woman. He's Chinese women, they're basically not human.
Say what you will about Stanley White, he's quite a consistent character in some regards. So, next up, Joey Tai...
say no, he's not even a consistent character in any regard.
I just mean him that he's anti-Chinese the whole fucking way through. That's what I meant.
Consistently racist.
He's anti-Chinese and then just, like, still trying to get into bed with a 20-year-old Chinese woman.
Yeah, but that's what racists are like. They'll meet somebody who they're attracted to from that race and they'll be like, oh, well, I wasn't talking about them. They're alright.
yeah.
That's what every British racist does.
Yeah. Like Starmer with his Jewish wife.
If you get my dick hard, you're one of the good ones.
Yeah, it's like Starmer, the most anti-Semitic politician in Britain, who purely uses Jewish people as like an instrument to maintain factional control of his party. But it's
that's
just
not
like...
fair. He's also expelled more Jewish people than any other party leader in our lifetime.
But he's got a Jewish wife, so how could he possibly be anti-Semitic? Anyway, we've been through this with FFF before. He had some interesting thoughts on that. But next up, we see Joey Tai interviewed by Tracy. She asks the important question, the question that's on all our lips. Mr. Tai, can you tell us if there is such a thing as the Chinese mafia? And he says, in the most supervillain fucking cadence I've ever heard, sounds very exciting, like a comic book. And she's like, the existence of triads is documented by the Drug Enforcement Agency. And he's like, documented without proof. And then he plays the fucking race card. Can you imagine this? In Year of the Dragon, someone tries to play the fucking race card in the post-racial society that is America. He says, this farce is further evidence of the persistent discrimination against Chinese in this country. And he says that they're emphasizing a sinister Charlie Chan image of Chinese people. So, once again, just using woke to excuse terrible... to let criminals off the hook. It's typical woke.
Oh, yeah, it's in, like, the next scene, like, they've got the guy with the voice box thing.
Yeah.
This is, like, literally the only good scene in the film. I don't think the film has any artistic merit apart from this one scene.
Yeah, an Italian guy with a Ned in South Park style voice change, what's it called? Where, you've had an operation.
I think of those with the exact same reference you've just used. Like, it's a specific hold it up to your neck thing. Like.
Jimbo, I think we should shoot those cows. Or whatever. Yeah, it's
well, if you've not watched South Park, it's the Alan Partridge thing where we have a director and he holds it up there. Like, what are you doing your James Bond voice? It's like, no, I've got no vocal cords.
But yeah, this is quite a good scene. It's great. I think Jim Jarmusch does it in Ghost Dog: The Way of the Samurai as well.
Yeah, he does when they meet like the three leaders of the mafia.
Yeah, exactly. It's great when you add the voice box thing to an Italian mafia character.
Yeah, like literally any film where you've got like an Italian character with a voice box and like he's doing like the stupid voices and you know he's going to drop the N-word at any point.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic scene.
Because we didn't mention that Joey Tai has like a black sidekick. His number one bodyguard and confidant seemingly is this black guy who it's never really mentioned that he's black in any other part of the film, except for with the Italian guy who insists that he stay out of the room when they have their meeting.
Yeah, and the Italian guy, he's not calling him a black guy, he's calling him another word.
Yeah, he does.
You know the word I'm going on about.
And then he says it again. He's like, who are you going to sell to? The N-words or Spics? You don't have that kind of weight with them. Because Joey Tai is trying to renegotiate the terms of the Chinese mafia's deal with the mafia, and they're not having it.
I will say, like, that is the only good scene in the film. Like, a scene you could show someone out of context and they'd like it if they're racist, like me.
Well, I was going to say that heavily depends who you show it to. Like...
No, it's just because FFF is so anti-Chinese. Like, he's like, finally, they're not giving these awful people representation in this scene. Apart from Joey, I guess. We got the nuns next. the nuns doing
with
the
bizarre
bugging device.
Yeah, again, like all the scenes in this make no sense. There's no laying down of groundwork for it or anything.
It's probably because the original cut was like 4 hours. Like, no, I'm not going off any information there, but just judging by Cimino's creative habits.
That'd be amazing. A 4-hour version of Year of the Dragon.
I think that would be like 5 stars. I think the film would be reclaimed at that point.
Well, yeah, Grant, you've seen this film, right? Like,
Yes.
I watched it a few days ago.
I watched it today.
I just remember so much about it and like how awful it is.
And it was bad. Every time I watch or read something on short notice for this podcast, it just kind of breaks my brain for a bit. I should really stop.
Well, no, I watched this and then I watched Showdown in Little Tokyo as a refresher. Showdown in Little Tokyo is basically this film, but good. It had Dolph Lundgren and Brandon Lee before he died, tragically young.
Well,
it's
I
like
guess
80
it was before
minutes
he
long.
died, yeah.
Yeah, it's 80 minutes long, and every 5 minutes there's like a knife fight scene or an action scene or a girl that tits out. It's basically this film, but what if it was actually good and not really dull?
Yeah, replaces the racism with stuff happening.
Yeah, but like it's weird. Like they had the disclaimer at the start saying, "Oh, this film might be a bit racist." The thing is, it's not that racist. You have a racist character saying racist things. It's like, yeah, we can still do that. These days, 3 billboards over Mississippi or whatever it's called. Like that's acceptable racism.
1 sec, guys. I'm just filling up my tea.
But like, I would say like a more racist 80s film than this would be 16 Candles. With the Asian character in that.
Yeah,
Have you ever seen that?
That's a pretty fucking incredibly racist character, yeah. Basically
Yeah,
ruins the whole
like-
film because it's just so ill judged.
It is.
Short
Like,
Circuit. That's a fucking classic example.
Oh, yeah, that's another one. But yeah, 16 Candles, you watch like every time the Asian character appears on screen, there's a gong ringing. And also, like, he's a Japanese guy playing a Chinese guy with a Vietnamese name. Like, it's just so many layers of racism in what would otherwise be a really nice film. In the 80s, it would more be like anti-Japanese racism because in the 80s and 90s, they were terrified of Japan taking them over economically.
That probably peaked late 80s, very start of the 90s, I think, before they realised it was on the downswing again. But yeah, there was a whole little mini craze of like Japan are the next superpower coming to get us sort of thing. I mean, that's what cyberpunk as a setting sort of tended to come from. The idea that like, if these trends continue, fucking Disco Stew chart, that somehow leads to Japan and Korea owning everything in America in 20 years.
Well, yeah, like a good sci-fi, it's like it never is talking about future. It's basically talking about the present and what if these trends continue.
Where are we?
No, we were just on a bit of a sidetrack there about anti-Japanese paranoia in America in the late 80s and early 90s.
Alright. I love, like, a load of rock stars from that era just, like, randomly wrote songs. Like, I guess it wasn't random, it was due to very concrete economic relations. But they would write songs like, I bought a phone, it was made in Japan, everything's made in Japan these days.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, and it's all built on
an
economic insecurity, which is why now we hate China instead of Japan. Because oh my god, China might overtake us.
Yeah. Well, I hate them because they invented the concept of a mafia 1,000 years ago. Personally. So yeah, alright, we've got these nuns. What the fuck is the deal with the nuns? Did they do missionary work in China and that's how they speak Chinese? There's got to be context behind those characters that is not. It's
implied that, but like you said, like I think there was a lot of this cut out, so we just have to work it out from context clues. But it's never like explained why we have to do the wiretapping in like the shittiest old building that's about to be demolished.
Which we find out in a few scenes. The Chinese kind of seem to sniff out pretty quickly that there's some untoward shit going down there. So he wants to hit Chinatown like Genghis Khan, he says. He wants restaurant health violations, immigration busts, the whole lot.
He's basically like going full Nigel Farage.
And then he finds himself once again, for like the 3rd time in the film, getting a bollocking from police high command. They've hauled him in there. You're only meant to shake up the gang, kids, not turn the whole city upside down. And at this point, Lou totally loses his shit with him. White is just gibbering on about the Chinese mafia once again, and Lou just goes, "What investigation? What Chinese mafia? The investigation's in your mind." White just loses his shit. He says, "Politics. It's always fucking politics. It's Vietnam all over again." Because basically the rich Chinese people have been they've been pressuring the mayor, and the mayor's been pressuring the police chief to, leave them the fuck alone.
Yeah, but again, what he says, it's Vietnam all over again, but you don't know what Vietnam means to him, because he generally has hatred of Asians. It's like, oh, it's Vietnam again, but it stops me killing more Asians, because LBJ took us out of it.
Oh, it was Nixon who took them out of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry, I don't know as much about it. Oh, yeah, it was LBJ who got them into them, Nixon who took them out.
Yeah, LBJ was the architect of... Well, he did it for bad reasons. We don't need to be too nice to Nixon. Although he did, he was responsible for the détente in Sino-US relations.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he went to China.
He did indeed. Gates spoke to Hamas.
Will never ever vote for him.
There's a hilariously shit line in this scene. His commanding officer is complaining about how he's just getting all this shit from the mayor because he won't stop his crusade against the Chinese. And he's like, "You're putting a gun to my head, Stanley." And Stanley's like, "That's who we are. We're 4 guys in a room with a gun to our heads." It's like, what, you've all got the same gun to all 4 of your heads?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
And fundamentally, aside from that little thing about him talking about gun in the singular, what the fuck are you talking about? What does that mean? If somebody said that in real life, you'd be like, "Oh, fuck off." Just we're 4 guys in a room. It's like, I'm not like you. I'm not one of you. Don't include me with you. I'm a lone voice out there crusading in the streets against the Chinese.
Well, yeah, and then the next scene is basically him going to the Japanese / Chinese journalist's house.
Yeah.
It's coming with an armful of books and goes, "These are my books about China."
Yeah. All my Chinese books.
So fucking funny.
And
all my Chinese books.
He's definitely not read any of these. He
yeah,
read one page
big,
of that
books.
other book.
I genuinely think he's illiterate. I don't think this man can read.
He sees a sign in English and he's like, "More fucking Mandarin."
The guy's like, why does she let him in her flat? This guy's just a fucking loser. He's in his late 40s. He's having arguments with his wife. If you're a girl in your young 20s and that guy's hammering on your door, you fucking call the police. You don't fucking let him in.
But before that, Lou is not happy with his old friend for his dalliance with this young Chinese woman. So he says something offensive about her. I assume calls her a racial slur for Chinese, if my memory serves me right. White punches him, and that's when he says, "That wasn't between cops. That was between 2 guys from the old neighborhood." And then,
it's such loser behaviour.
Yeah. So does he meet Tracy in the next bit? Because I seem to have skipped that scene.
No, I'm watching right now on YouTube. So the next scene is he goes to Tracy's house. She lets him in for some reason, and then he just comes in with an armful of books and he goes, "These are all my books about China."
Yeah. And then after that, is that when he tries to go back to his wife?
I think there might be the really bad sex scene before that. Let's see.
Oh right, okay.
That's actually
one way she keeps telling him, "No, I'm not sexually attracted to you," and he just keeps going on, and then she eventually gives in to him. Because that's how films worked in the 80s.
That's what they say about consent. You just got to make them give in to you. That's how it works.
This is what's going to happen in a few months when Mark Does Red comes to England for his work, and we have the Top Rope Deep Dive meetup. He's going to turn up. Here are all my books about China.
Here are all my books about Wales.
Yeah, and then I just slap him out of his hand, and I just do not take no for an answer.
So that's the end of the Top Rope Deep Dive stream. Thank you for everyone who's tuned in the last year.
So come on, when does he go back to his wife then? When does he go home And
it's after like I say, like I've got this on YouTube at the same time. He's like a basically divorced 40-year-old guy goes round to the 20-year-old woman's house who should not have let him in. She's like, "Oh my god, you're so weird and cranky, but actually I will have sex with you." And that's why this is a film for pussies, because that's what they imagine their life will be.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I've got like no skills. Everyone hates me. I just like shit. I have no personality. I fucking stink. And yeah, a 20-year-old Asian woman will fuck me because I'm a white guy.
Well, what I like is that when he does finally go home to his wife, they agree to end their relationship in a civilized fashion. She's just like, "Oh,
Then
you
that immediately turns into a bloodbath.
what?"
Yeah.
He comes in and is like, "Yeah, I'll give you a house and shit," and then just the Chinese assassins come in 2 seconds later.
Yeah, literally, like, right, okay, exposition done, murder now.
Yeah, just in case you thought she'd got away from her piece of shit husband, like, no, she's never gonna be able to. The only way she's escaping this marriage is in a fucking coffin. But before that, they have a whole argument, which is when he says, "I need some time."
He says talking about babies.
Yeah, he says...
that's the only thing women care about.
Yeah,
like,
she just wants to have a baby.
I'm 35 years old. I'm over the hill.
And he can't have
to give you babies.
He can't really have a baby now because, like, the Chinese mafia are coming after him, and it just wouldn't be safe for the baby. So he says, "I just need some time." And she says, "I'm out of time. I'm 35, sliding into 40. Fucking hell. Way to make me feel better about turning 30, fucking bitch.
No,
I'm glad you get killed after that.
I've got this sex scene between Mickey Rourke, 50-year-old Mickey Rourke in film, and the younger Asian journalist on now. There's a bit where she's obviously not riding his dick. It's like the most unerotic sex scene ever. But, like, she gets off him and he just goes, "Chinese don't have a word for love." I'm pretty sure they fucking do.
Yeah, it seems like they'd like account for that somewhere. It would come up in building one of the numerous Chinese languages. Just like somewhere in the evolution of one of, again, the multiple tongues spoken in the large nation of China. Yeah.
It's just like so weird. She falls in love with like this old guy. He looks like he fucking smells. He's racist. He's married. I'm gonna ride his dick, and then immediately after he comes, in 3 seconds, he's just gonna tell me, "Oh, Chinese don't believe in love."
Yeah, you're like, no regrets. But, you know, like, loads of guys, like, who fit the sort of Stanley White archetype, like, as you say, loser, pieces of shit, racist, stinking, violent cops. Loads of those guys have got to, like, literally pay to have their wives murdered. His supposed enemies do it for him for free.
So the next bit at the awful sex scene is the young Chinese guy. He meets the old Chinese guy, one with the big head and the long hair.
Yeah.
All right, yeah.
In a white suit.
I don't think that's a key scene to the plot, really.
No.
I tried to only note down the essential stuff or the funniest racist lines.
It comes up later in the Burma scene where like he brings his head out. But again, like most of this film, you could easily take basically any scene out of this film and make it better.
Yeah.
To the point you could take literally every scene out of this film and make it 0 seconds long, and it would be a better film.
So his wife gets murdered, and like, I gotta be honest, when I first watched this, I don't know, I was like editing a Bob Dylan bootleg or something. My full attention wasn't on the entirety of the film. I looked away and I just assumed that his wife had killed herself due to his spousal neglect and mistreatment.
No, even funnier, before his wife kills himself.
Even funnier.
No. In that scene, for some reason, he's wearing his old Vietnam Army jackets, just so you didn't notice that he is a Vietnam vet. It's never mentioned, like, for some reason, he's got his old Vietnam Army coat on.
And
why do you still fucking have that? But yeah,
I don't know. It seems like the kind of thing vets would hold on to, but you know, I'm just picturing the fucking, the legless bloke out of Forrest Gump. Doesn't he wear his old army fatigues sometimes?
You would, but like until this point, Mickey Rourke has been wearing suits and stuff. But then this scene, he decides, "Oh, I'll take out my old army jacket from Vietnam 10,
yeah,
20
as
years
if to
ago,
convey, it's just
on."
like Nam all over again.
It's like, Yeah, I mean, I still understand why you'd keep it, but why just like put it on randomly?
Yeah. I'm surprised that his mate Lou is never exposed as an agent of the Chinese, because he just keeps insisting that he leave the Chinese alone, to the point that the racial slurs for Chinese people that Lou uses almost feel like, he doth protest too much. Like they're kind of just a cover for his Chinese sympathies, because he says... And he has it, but like he's at the bar with Lou after the wedding. Obviously, I meant the funeral. And Lou lights into the pussy generation, by which I mean boomers who served in Vietnam. He's like, I know you're not one of them belly-aching professional Vietnam veterans who's making a career out of pissing and groaning about the war. Like, fuck you, Ron Kovac. Fuck you, legless bloke out of Forrest Gump. You made some...
Fuck you, Tom Cruise in 4th of July.
Well, that is Ron Kovic. That's who I mentioned. But he's like, I love this. Like, he's like, you're not like the professional Vietnam veterans who made a career out of pissing and groaning about the war. You made something of yourself. Nice bit of Reaganism there.
His racism isn't based on ADHD or anything. If they were just saying, oh yeah, you're a good man. And you mean
PTSD, not ADHD?
I think we should clarify.
Oh, yeah,
surely you mean PTSD.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's cool that I'm... No, you don't understand. I've got ADHD. That's why I use the N-word all those times.
Thousands of people coming home from Vietnam suffering suddenly from ADHD. As a direct result.
That was Mark Wahlberg's excuse. He saw a Vietnamese guy. It's like, I've got ADHD. You don't understand. I need to assault a Vietnamese guy whenever I see him. Again, like, it makes no sense. Like, it would make sense, like, if they said, oh, Mickey Rourke's character's PTSD, he's suffering from a trauma of war. But they make a point of saying, no, this guy is mentally healthy before and after war. He just fucking hates Chinese people.
And the media. Don't forget, he's getting at the media through his attacks on the Chinese.
But the bit where the Chinese people kill his wife and try to kill him, there's a bit where they drive the car into the wall at like 5 miles an hour, and then it immediately explodes.
Yeah.
No fucking reason.
Yeah, and he pulls the guy's charred corpse out, and he's just screaming like, "He's evidence! He's evidence!"
Yeah. Yeah, it makes no fucking sense. Like, if you drive a car into a wall, it's not gonna fucking explode. They didn't have Teslas in the 80s.
For beautiful pre-Elon days, before he made cars bad. Yeah, so then there's this awesome showdown that he has with Herbert, the undercover cop who he's put in Chinatown.
Oh, before that, there's a long scene in Burma where the Chinese guy goes to buy heroin. And you could cut this.
I thought it was in Thailand.
Scene.
It was in the jungle outside of Bangkok. You could cut it, but it's beautifully shot and staged.
Yeah, it's really well done. It's like it's the one part of the film that is well directed and well cinematographed and stuff. It has no function on the rest of the film. It just nothing from the story. There's no reason to put this in.
That scene on its own must have cost millions of dollars. It's like he wanted to make this whole other, like, epic actually set, if not in China and somewhere in Asia.
It does seem like a scene from another film, another better film.
The Last Emperor, have you seen that? About the little boy who becomes Emperor of China?
No, I haven't. I know of it.
Yeah, that's like the other big role that John Lone, who was Joey Tai in this, had.
Oh, yeah, shit, I forgot he's in that. But yeah, it looked like a scene out of The Last Emperor.
That was the good film people remember him for. This was the shit one.
Was that Bertolucci who directed that? Anyway.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a good movie.
Yeah,
but the
like,
sweeping vista.
I would actually say I was wrong for these actually have good scenes. It is visually pleasing. It's nice. There's some tension there. This seems like it comes out of a completely different film. Yeah,
I noticed the two scenes that you like in the film are two where Mickey Rourke does not appear. But yeah, that is a sick sequence where he goes and meets with the... Isn't it in Thailand? Because he said it's in the jungle outside of Bangkok.
I don't know, I'm sure they made reference to it being in Burma, and I checked this beforehand. Apparently, like, Burma or Myanmar, that's been in a state of conflict since 1943. It's like, that's too long to have a conflict, lads. We're not in the medieval times anymore.
Well, I don't know, I've got Thailand here, but I'll defer to your expertise.
I've got the script up, let's find this out.
Let's get to the bottom of this. Let's finally be the first white people
Burmese
to tell
are
different types of
mentioned in the
Asians
film,
apart.
certainly. both Thailand and Burma are mentioned in the... Oh god, this is a difficult script to find stuff in. It's just a poorly formatted wall of slurs for like 100 pages.
That's what Gatecast scripts are like as well, to be fair.
I think this script has possibly been produced by machine from the subtitles.
Yeah, some of these scripts that you get online like that are not very legible.
So it was immediately after the scene, or soon after the scene where his wife dies, is that right?
Yeah.
Hang on.
Have you ever read Django? I don't know why you would have done, but if you read Tarantino's script for Django Unchained, like as he wrote it, in the stage directions, he calls all the slaves like N-words. He just says such and such has so many N-words. Like the N-words come forward in their chains.
Like it was like putting like brackets around it to make it like.
Yeah, 3 brackets.
Like...
He calls them Jewish N-words. No, he doesn't. He just refers to them that way. I assume he's trying to tell the script in the sort of vernacular of the time.
Yeah, no, sorry. This is clearly pulled from the subtitles, so it doesn't say.
But Tarantino has 3 loves: feet, saying the N words, and feet again.
The reason I didn't take any notes, other than to say, "Oh, it's Thailand they go to, not China," and it may apparently not even be be Thailand rather. We're not sure. See, I'm getting them confused now. I didn't really take any notes about that because it's so not germane to the plot. It's just like, here's Joey Tai doing some more nefarious criminal activity. It's like, we've seen him do that in America anyway. We know he's the criminal.
You could cut this out of film, but it's also the best scene in the film. Yeah, it's the only scene in the film that is actually good.
Yeah, Cimino's not really a kind of cutting something because it's not germane to the plot kind of director. It's not really his style. I'm sure he's been forced to do it at points. Clint Eastwood wouldn't have had any truck with that scene if he were producing this movie. That's for sure. Why do you want to go to fucking China? Why can't you film it on the Warner Brothers studio lot?
This film, we didn't actually film it in Chinatown. We just built this amazing set on a soundstage.
Oh, that is pretty cool.
None of this actually is filmed in Chinatown.
Well, that is quite impressive. I mean, maybe it should have got like an Oscar for set design or something.
Oh yeah, set design of this is really good. The only good thing I have to say about it.
Although Chinatown does feel kind of constricted, it does sort of feel like a relatively small set rather than an actual city.
Yeah, you talking from experience there. Have you gone to Chinatown, Jack?
What, and found it small and claustrophobic? No, I just mean that, like, you don't really get a sense of like Chinatown as this sweeping city. It seems like you're just going between a few little locations.
Yeah, when you watch back, it is just literally that one street that everything happens on.
Yeah, which is kind of like Westerns, actually. For Unforgiven, Clint had High Street built to be like pure town. Anyway, this is boring film nerd stuff. So after that one very well staged scene, back in America, Herbert, the undercover cop, is getting pissed off at White, and he's basically saying, "I'm not going to die for you. You just want me to."
Before that was the long funeral sequence for his wife.
Oh yeah, but that's boring. Yeah. We can't literally run through every bit of every scene.
No, I'll just like point out before that there's like 5 minutes of him crying for his wife, who he hated and
who he clearly hated during the entire film up to that point.
His bitch wife, whose sole purpose in the film was to die at some point to create dramatic tension.
His bitch wife who'd stay at home and fix the washing machine when it wasn't working. She was too fucking old to have kids.
just a completely busted 35-year-old. Disgusting.
Bang bang, I miss you, wife.
So yeah, Herbert, the undercover cop, is at the end of his tether. "I'm not gonna die for you, White." When you hear him say that, you're like, okay, so the next scene he's gonna die for him.
Yeah.
He goes on this amazing rant about how like the Chinese like are cool. But he also how the Poles suck. He's like, when your ancestors were living in caves and scrambling for coal in Poland.
Yeah, I mentioned this before. This is basically the bit where he just turns to screen and says, "Oh, do you know the Americans discriminate against Chinese?"
Yeah.
And that's why this whole film is okay. They do that twice.
It's like, yeah, I know the Americans discriminate against the Chinese. I'm watching this fucking American film right now. When your ancestors were living in caves and scrambling for coal in Poland, the Chinese were sailing their ships across the Pacific. Hey, what do you know about my ancestors? What do you know about mine? We were traders, shipbuilders, explorers. We taught you agriculture. We gave you the orange, the grape, your irrigation system. You know, what did the Chinese ever do for us?
That scene is basically Brianna Wu reading Wikipedia about whatever.
Yeah, we did this. Chinese person, Brianna Wu, who's totally 100% Chinese.
My granddad had a monopoly on all the eggs in China. There weren't any eggs in Poland.
Yeah, the Polish cave people hadn't discovered eggs at that point, which I assume was like 1803, before they discovered coal in Poland.
The whole thing about Herbert is he does not have a character arc. Like I said before, he just turns up 45 minutes later because they need someone to die and say, "Oh, do you know Chinese built railroads?" It's like, yeah, we fucking know.
Well, yeah, he's like, we dug your gold and silver, Stanley, taught you how to fish the Pacific, and still we were barred from American citizenship until 1943. We worked so hard to build your...
Yeah, so specific with the dates. It's not something you'd actually say to someone if you were pissed about being racist about you.
He's just been reading Stanley's books. He's just picked up one of Stanley's books about China, and that he'd highlighted that on one page. We worked so hard to build your railroads, and when our opium didn't come on time, we were so desperate, we helped each other kill ourselves. But I'm not going to kill myself for you, Captain White. And you're like, okay, so next scene he is definitely going to sacrifice himself for Captain White. Obviously, he does die immediately afterwards.
Also, didn't we have a bit of a scene where, Mickey Rourke saying, Chinese people don't kill themselves. It's, not an honourable thing. Then at the end of the film, he helps the villain kill himself.
Oh, so yeah, that's so... He's got a couple of confrontations with Joey before that. I mean, after Herbert gets killed, White goes along and just beats the shit out of Joey. But the toilets of the Chinese nightclub are such a mecca of debauchery and sin and vice that there's people fucking and sucking and doing blow in all the toilet cubicles. So it takes him 4 attempts to find a free cubicle to push him into the toilet in. Yeah, so there's another showdown. His avuncular sidekick, the other cop working for him, gets shot, but he apparently takes no time off. He just limps through the rest of the film. Then White has a confrontation with Tracy. This is the bit of the film where there's a kind of contrived bit of tension in their burgeoning relationship. Oh, shit, Audacity's frozen and stopped recording my side. Still, recorded about 3 hours of stuff. As long as we've got 2 separate recordings of it, then I'll just start recording again once I've got that back up.
Sure. Sounds like at worst you'll have 10-15 minutes gap there, which will be on mine.
I'll just go lo-fi for the next few minutes while I save my files I've got so far. And this is after she's had a couple of shady guys come to her apartment, isn't it? So he comes to confront Tracy, and he's like, you're sitting here acting like some phony white bread cunt. When you get a big C dropped in an American film, you know that it's going to be used in a especially hateful manner towards women.
Especially tactful way. You only get one of them each film.
He calls her a white bread cunt and then immediately corrects himself. You're not even white. You're Chinese. No. He says, those are your people down there. What are you, a reporter or a whore? She then confesses that she was raped, not by him, by someone who's not allowed to do it. Chinese, obviously.
Well, yeah, that's one of the weirdest bits, because she's half Japanese and she was raped by Chinese people, whereas historically that happened the other way around.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. Yeah, exactly.
We might have to stop that bit.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see in post.
Oh God.
I actually thought that this was one of the better acted scenes on behalf of the woman who plays Tracy. The way that she says, it didn't happen to you,
Yeah,
it happened to me, I thought was quite a compelling line. The way that men take on women's suffering as this kind of crusade that they're going to right.
They just use it as a justification for their...
Like, throughout film, like, nothing bad happens to Mickey Rourke. It's like, okay, my partner gets killed, my wife gets killed, my girlfriend gets raped, but nothing happens to me. Mickey Rourke is fine throughout the entire film.
That's true, but just to the point that so often, and this happens very much in films, but also in life, some woman will be harmed in some way, and a guy is like, okay, I'm going to make this right by causing physical harm to one or more people. And that isn't always the woman's idea of justice for what happened to her. And I thought that was quite well articulated in this scene. In Unforgiven, the catalyzing incident for the events of the film is that a sex worker gets her face cut up by a guy. And the other prostitutes really want that guy to be killed because they basically felt like we're treated the same as cattle. We aren't given like the same rights as men, and they can do whatever they want with us. But the actual sex worker who it happened to, she never says anything about wanting guys killed and harmed as vengeance. So I thought this scene was one of the ones in the film where something interesting pokes through. But Mickey Rourke, obviously, is as terrible in this scene as he is in the rest of the film, and as is the dialogue that he's given to deliver.
Yeah, so then we've got like the we're trying to like to do a big action set piece at the end, but it doesn't work with the rest of the movie.
Oh no, I thought this was sick. I can't lie.
It was all right. It was well enough done. It seemed to me like they thought of the cool action sequence and the conclusion with Joey Ty's death, and then they set up the entire rest of the movie to set up that scene. Like they went backwards from that, and that's why so much of the rest of the movie is convoluted and clunky and really dubious in terms of characterization, motivation, everything. It needs to set up the angry cop on a crusade and is obvious.
Yeah, it's very like a bit at the end where there's a corrupt cop and he drives past shouting abuse and Mickey Rourke immediately shoots him.
That was the bit I liked. I thought that was such a cool bit. It's just like,
it's so stupid.
Just like the senselessness of it, just like the fact that it's over in a flash. The guy's like, "Hey, you motherfucker," and just immediately gets his head blown off. It's just like, wow, you really thought that would work, huh? Just driving up to him, like giving him a perfect chance to shoot you. But yeah, then Joey flees and they have the big showdown on the bridge. He almost gets hit by a train, but doesn't. And then he starts walking along the train tracks. It's so funny when Mickey Rourke is chasing him. Did you notice he lets out these like weird high-pitched girly screams? He just goes like, ah! They're just and he's not been shot or anything. He's just like doing like a war cry.
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta do it.
War cry.
You gotta have a good old yell.
Yeah, so he shoots Joey, and Joey goes down, but then Joey's like, "Give me your gun," and it's like, generally you would not give the bad guy
I would
your
have
gun.
fucking loved the ending if he gave Joey his gun and then just Joey shoots Mickey Rourke.
Yeah, it would have been
been so
fucking deserved.
funny.
Yeah, just desserts. But no, he doesn't do that. Fucking Joey kills himself. He takes the honourable way out.
Even though they described earlier in the film that Chinese people don't consider suicide to be honourable, he still took the honourable way out.
You're right, he takes the dishonourable way out. I mean, what is he, Japanese? He's clearly not real China. He's clearly not real Chinese. Like, I mean, isn't Japan kind of like Reaganite China anyway? Okay, maybe the answer to that question is no.
Japan is its
Are
own
you informed
thing,
enough
which,
to are any
do.
of us informed enough to have that discussion without it being offensive and with enough insight to
I
justify
am informed
it?
enough to have that.
I've got my book of books about China.
FFF, when you say you're informed about it, do you mean you've watched lots of Japanese pornography? be honest.
No, I'm informed about it. I've got my copy.
I've got my Japanese products, Japanese documentaries about how fucking sick and paedophile they all are.
Is that your idea of pornography? Like,
Yeah.
No. Anyway, I'm informed about this. I've got my copy of Thinking China, whatever it's called, right here.
FFF dubbing
dubbing
a Louis Theroux voiceover on it so they know I'm not wanking.
But yeah, but it was a bit fun when his wife died and he's just like sitting in a room and you see on the wall there's a book, Chinese Mafia. Well, for some reason there's also a bunch of bowling trophies. Why do you fucking keep those?
Who says he's got no hinterland? Who says that this man is singularly focused on taking down the Chinese?
Maybe there is
He's
bitch
so
wives.
proud of him.
Yeah, exactly.
You shouldn't assume you're sexist.
And thank you for using the correct nomenclature, Geraint. You are absolutely right. It is his bitch wife, not simply his wife.
I'm not a misogynist like you. I'm not going to use the other word.
But also, like, the ending scene, like, after he's taken him down, is one of the funniest things, where they're trying to do a funeral for him, and he just turns up and just starts assaulting people and demanding they arrest them for being Chinese.
Yeah, he starts trying to do citizens' arrests on just random Chinese people in the middle of the street, and they all just beat him up, like he's completely lost his authority.
What's that really xenophobic young Labour person? Kira Lewis. That's like if they were a cop.
Come here.
Yeah, it's like
the Chinese government is speaking to this person. Arrest them now.
Yeah, it's like the cops like literally have to like stop him and drag him away just because he saw a bunch of Chinese people and assumed they're all doing drugs.
Yeah, and then
kingpins.
Tracy catches up with him and he's just like, "Oh, what are you like?" And this is
what are you like? My violent 48-year-old boyfriend.
Yeah,
who hates Chinese people.
She does say like, "Oh, you're so cracked," but she says it in a loving way, and they like freeze frame.
And they kiss.
Yeah, they freeze frame on a romantic moment between them, and for some reason, there's just like a load of black people taking up half a shot in the middle of Chinatown, and having been barely.
Yeah. They'd rather have money for extras, so it's like, okay, there's no more Chinese extras left. Let's buy extras.
Did you notice?
Ridiculous film.
It's just like what? There's been one black character in the film so far, like Joey's henchman, and then at the end, like there's just a load of them at the Chinese parade for some reason. And they look bemused. They're watching this kiss and they're like, who the fuck is this? Is that the guy who was just having a breakdown further down the street?
The guy who just like went around attacking random Chinese people.
Yeah.
How is he not in jail? The actual last line of the film, as it appears in the actual cut, is White saying, "You were right and I was wrong. I'd like to be a nice guy, but I just don't know how to be nice." According to Cimino, the final line of White was originally scripted as, "Well, I guess if you fight a war long enough, you end up marrying the enemy." The studio vetoed that. It was written by Stone. Cimino feels that either the studio or the producers thought the original line was politically incorrect. Going off the film as it came out, I'm not that sure they'd been bothered by that, really.
It's bloody woke. Yeah, no, I'm going to say both those lines fucking suck ass.
Yeah.
Those are both terrible closing lines for the film.
But there's
the actual one they used the actual one they used is more Decker, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
I want to be a nice guy, but I don't know how to be nice with all these special interests.
You just got to crack a few Chinese heads. You'll get there eventually.
But yeah, there were two reactions to this film. Was Cimino, who said Chinese people loved it, and there were actual Chinese people who said this is the most offensive thing we've ever seen.
I mean, if you ever thought the moral arc of the universe might bend towards justice, consider that Year of the Dragon got made, and none of these other Cimino projects about China and the Chinese community did. So let me quickly run you through some of these films that were not able to receive financing that Cimino came up with Chinese themes.
Like, can I try and guess some of them? Like, was one of them called the girl?
No.
Was one of them called the girl with?
No, that was not.
I tried to stop this.
No. No, I think that's one of the Japanese films that you've spoken about on this podcast in the past. Sorry, okay, here we go. After working on the script about the role of Chinese immigrants in the construction of the first transcontinental railroad in the American West. So that was why there was all this stuff about the Chinese building the railroads.
That exact one.
He'd already done the research. He's got to get it in there somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, he was like, well, I don't actually care about this story, but I can work these ideas from a project I did care about into here. So that's why they keep mentioning the Chinese building the railroads. Cimino was to follow, I guess, The Sun Chaser, I think, his film. Hang on, I started watching this film just before we started recording. Yeah, The Sun Chaser from 1996. He planned to follow that film with An American Dream about the first Asian immigrant to join Al Capone's mob. Jason Scott Lee was attached to star, and the film was supposed to shoot in Chicago, San Francisco, and South Korea. So this one's not specifically Chinese, but it is him trying to represent the Asian American diaspora again. Anyway, that project obviously fell apart. Then in September 2000, this is very Chinese, this next one. In September 2001, it was reported that Cimino would return to the director's chair to make Man's Fate, a 3-hour epic, so, a moderately... one of moderate length by his standards. A 3-hour epic set against the backdrop of the Chinese Revolution. Based on French author André Malraux's 1933 novel, the film, as described by Cimino, was to have depicted the deep emotional bonds that developed between several Europeans living in Shanghai during the tragic turmoil that characterized the onset of China's communist regime. So that sounds like it's getting anti-communist at the end, but I think that's just how American publications were reporting the plot, because the roughly $25 million project was to have been shot wholly on location in Shanghai and would have benefited from the support of China's government, which said it would provide $2 million worth of local labour costs. Anyway, that fell through again. No European film financing groups wanted to fund that, so the funding fell apart. Cimino was attached to produce the independent film The Silk Curtain about Empress Dowager Cixi, who ruled China for 47 years until 1908. Consolina Wong was to have directed from her own screenplay and was to have starred as Cixi. Jason Scott Lee was also considered for a role again. Cimino said he was drawn to The Silk Curtain by the strength of the characters and the intimate story about their relationships, played out against one of the most tumultuous periods in China's history.
He has a fixation on China, despite having no knowledge of China.
Do you reckon some of those film ideas he was thinking, I could make Year of the Dragon right? Like, I could compensate for my sins.
I'm going to cast Mickey Rourke in all of them.
Yeah. I had to give up on watching The Desperate Hours, which is Cimino's 1990 film, which is a remake of a film from the 50s, which is a really good movie. I didn't like it at all, and it was another kind of high-octane fucking performance by Mickey Rourke, where I just found him supremely unlikable and kind of grotesque. He's playing a bad guy in it, so he's not supposed to be too likable, but I'm trying to think who was in the original The Desperate Hours. Like, if it was Humphrey Bogart. Anyway, even when he's a villain, he's pretty likable, unlike Rourke. Well, that's what happens when you fall in with the Chinese mafia.
That's what happens when you don't learn about presidents from a cool white guy who teaches you to it through rap.
The mafia wasn't even invented in Italy. It was invented in China
1,000 years ago.
It was invented 1,000 years ago. Yeah, 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, before China invented organised crime 1,000 years ago, nobody broke the law. It happened.
Yeah, nobody thought of it.
It happened in 1000 AD. Before that, there was no crime.
The China connection.
Yeah, literally, this film is. I'm glad you got that in, because
they could have called it or subtitled it that. Like,
yeah, this film is just like the China connection. Decca versus the goddamn Chinese. Anyway, I gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd, which is probably a bit generous.
That's extremely generous. Fucking hell.
I would give it like maybe 2. because like
two stars for the spectacle. Yeah,
2 stars. Like there's the occasional funny bit in it, but like the film as a whole is kind of dull.
There's a handful of
every
scenes that
scene
could have
goes
been
on too
repurposed
long.
into a better movie. Or several different better movies. I'm not saying they particularly hang together well.
I didn't find it that dull the first time I watched it, but rewatching it last night, yeah, I'll concede that it does kind of overstay its welcome.
It takes a long time to get going, with a couple of exceptions, like you're sort of storming into the Chinese mafia's house and just yelling at them. Other than that, there's not much going on for like the first hour and a quarter or something, and then suddenly it's just confrontation, death, confrontation, action scene, abrupt ending. Okay, right, cool.
Yeah, it's weird pacing actually. Like the murder of the undercover cops comes so quickly after the murder of his wife. Yeah,
and like I say, like the cop, he's not in it for 45 minutes. You forget he's in it. It's like, oh yeah, do you remember like we brought in this undercover cop? Well, here he is, and he's about to die.
But he's not going to let you forget what the Chinese contributed to America.
Yes, he's going to have that bit where he talks to the screen and says, did you know they wouldn't let us bring our wives in until 1943? Anyway, I'm off to die.
Well, I did learn from this film what the Chinese brought to America. They bring drugs, they bring crime, they're rapists. And some of them, precisely 2, are good people.
Yeah, and one of them is only even half Chinese, so she doesn't even count as a Chinese person. He's got like good Japanese blood in her.
And Tony, he's got a sort of American mindset, hasn't he? It's sort of grind set, really. He's like, I've worked in sweatshop for 40 years and I never once complain. I never try and organise union.
Yeah, but it's like a really Reaganite thing about it. Like I said before, like, Chinese people are trying to get rich by, going around rules and going through deregulation and just doing anything for profit. That's not how we do things here in America in the 80s. In America in the 80s, we play by the rules. We're all honest people.
I love that, like, in China, we think that your good Samaritan is a stupid cunt.
Yeah, I'd say, like, the Chinese people in it are basically just Reaganites.
In communist China, we think that your Jesus Christ is a little woke bitch.
That was a terrible film. I wouldn't have watched it if you hadn't told me to, and if I'd watched it like this on my own, I would have like turned it off after 20 minutes. After like 10 minutes, just because they promised at the beginning this was going to be a racist film, and then it wasn't even racist enough to be funny.
It was quite racist.
Like, dude, it was so funny. It was so much fun.
It was, but like racist.
I think a lot of the funniest scenes were front loaded as well. The really Decker bits, and it eased off on that a little bit. Rourke got a little bit more comfortable with his character. Faint praise, like, but... Yeah,
but like I said, like, the racism in it was a racist character saying racist things, which you can still do today. For a proper racist film, you want...
Yeah, I fucking know that. I've got you on the podcast.
But no, like I said, 3 billboards over Missouri. You've got a racist guy in there, Sam Rockwell, saying racist things. But you can't, like, do a proper, really racist Asian stereotype in a film these days, like you could in 16 Candles.
No, even South Park haven't done the City Walk guy in ages.
Anyway, I had a really fun time talking to you guys, as always.
Yeah, man.
Brian, I'll catch up with you on Sunday. Jack will just keep, messaging each other nudes, and we'll see how we go.
Yeah, nudes and slurs, the 2 genders.
But yeah, Jack, hopefully my Audacity is still going. Yeah, great. So I'll send you the recording shortly.
That's definitely the first time we've checked that Audacity in 4 hours as well. So it's still working.
Yeah, I have stopped recording my Audacity side, so I'll say that. All right, cool. And I've got the recording of the call as well, so I can use any bits where we shared the screen. I can clip them for YouTube if I want. Cool. Okay. Goodbye. Pleasure as always.
Good, guys. Speak soon. Bye.